2 days back, I got this comment on one of my videos. But wait, didn't I already make a video on this? Was my question to myself. But then when I checked my videos, I could not find one. Oh, bad, I really missed it, right? So we had to discuss about crop sensors, that is APS-C sensors and full frame sensors. How did I miss that? So yes guys, in today's video, we're going to see all about APS-C and full frame sensors. So before that, I'm going to include this video in the photography masterclass playlist that I have been creating for quite a while. So it will have all those videos that as a beginner to photography, you need to learn all the basics. If you feel so, you can just check out this playlist where you can find all those basics that someone needs to know just to learn photography. So yes guys, if you're new here, I'm Carrio from India. We talk photography, filmmaking, editing and many other social media stuffs that help creators like us. So if you're new here, do hit that subscribe button just right here. Just click on that subscribe. Hope you do that. And click on the bell icon nearby to get regularly notified whenever I make a video. So yes guys, without any further ado, let's get into the video. Welcome back guys. So this is a camera's lens. So what's the shape of this lens? It's a kind of a circle, right? A cylindrical shape. So have you ever wondered why your images are not circular in shape and why is it rectangular in shape? Because you are just capturing an image through a circular opening, but you are getting a rectangular image. How is that possible? Have you ever wondered? So that's where the sensor of the camera works. So we don't have a circular sensor on our cameras, right? We have a rectangular sensor. So sensors are of different type, like we could see APS-C sensors and full frame sensors. So what is the difference between APS-C and full frame? So let's start with full frame sensor. To know more about that, let's go back a little, few years back. How was a camera taking an image? How was the image developed into a print? For that you needed some film, right? A film was inside a camera. You just need to develop it in a darker room to just bring it as a print, right? So that film is actually a full frame. Those films were of the size 36 mm into 24 mm in 3:2 ratio. So a 35 mm film, that's how you call that. So that's a full frame dimension. 36 into 24 is the dimension of a full frame sensor. So now we know what is full frame sensor. Next, crop sensor, that is APS-C sensor. Generally, a cropped sensor is a cropped form of a full frame, which is 1.6 times for Canon and 1.5 times for Nikon. So Nikon alone is 1.5, other cameras are mostly 1.6 times cropped of a full frame. So if you see, if this is a full frame sensor, then this is a cropped sensor. So it's 1.5 or 1.6 times cropped sensor. The sensor will be smaller in size. Hope you got the physical overview of sensors between full frame and APS-C. So now let's see how this differentiation between sensors is going to affect aperture and focal length. So first let's start with the focal length. So in a full frame sensor camera, if you attach a 50 mm lens, just for an example, if you attach a 50 mm prime lens, it's going to give a focal length of 50 mm. There is no doubt about that. But now in an APS-C sensor like this camera which is recording this video, if you attach a 50 mm lens, then it's not actually 50 mm focal length. It's actually 50 into 1.6, which is 80 mm. So if you are attaching a 50 mm lens on a crop sensor camera, then the focal length is not 50 mm, it's actually 80 mm. If you're going to keep focal length 500 mm on an APS-C sensor or a crop sensor, then it's not 500 mm, it is 500 into 1.6 or 1.5 based on the camera brands. So 500 into 1.6, which is 800 mm. While if you use a full frame camera, then it's the same 500 mm lens. That's how focal length is affected in a full frame and an APS-C camera. Now I hope you are clear how focal length varies between full frame and APS-C. Now let's see how the sensor size is going to affect the aperture. So same way, even for aperture, you're going to multiply the crop factor for APS-C sensors. So if you keep your aperture at f1.8, you're going to multiply it with 1.6, which is around 2.8. So just imagine this is a full frame camera with a 50 mm lens. It's at 50 mm distance, and this is the frame of the video. Okay. Now I'm just gonna take that full frame camera and keep a crop sensor camera with the same 50 mm lens. What is gonna happen? The frame is gonna get reduced, right? You will have that 1.6 crop factor and the frame is reduced like this, what you are seeing now. So now you want that same frame that you had on a full frame camera in this crop sensor camera. So how can you get that? To have a wider frame, you need to move your camera a little bit back, right? So you are going to move your camera a little bit back. Now you got the frame in the same APS-C camera. But what happens? Let's consider both the cameras were in aperture 1.8. But when you move the camera, the crop sensor camera is moved a little bit back. What happens? If you increase the focal length, then it's going to affect the depth of field. So here it is a blank wall. I could not explain how it affects the depth of focus, but you got my point, right? When you move your camera a little bit back to get the frame, then the depth of field is not going to be the same because you are moving the camera, the focal length is changed. So there is going to be a measurable amount of difference between two images. So I'll just show you some sample images to find the difference. If you are going to move the APS-C camera a little bit back to get that same frame you had on full frame, then the shallow depth of field is going to be increased and you won't have the same depth of field that you had in a full frame camera. So that's how the sensor size is going to affect the aperture. So I hope you're clear like how sensor size is going to affect the focal length and aperture. Let's now see some pros and cons of this full frame and crop sensor. So what are the pros of the full frame? First, it's full frame. There is no crop factor, which means 50 mm focal length is 50 mm focal length. 1.8 aperture is 1.8 aperture. There is no difference. First point. Second, it's going to perform better in low light because you have a bigger sensor. So it's going to perform better in low light. You are going to have a lot of details. Third one is you have more control over depth of field. As there is no crop factor, you can just go closer to the subject and you will have better control of depth of field. And the fourth point is a full frame sensor is going to have a better dynamic range and color depth because a full frame sensor can record more tonal range between highlights and shadows. So you are going to have better dynamic range and good color depth while using a full frame sensor. So let's see some of the advantages of a cropped sensor. So crop sensor cameras are really less in price compared to full frame cameras. First advantage, budget friendly. You have a better focal length. So your 50 mm lens is not 50 mm, it's 80 mm. Your 500 mm lens is not 500 mm, it's 800 mm. So just imagine if you are a bird photographer or a wildlife photographer. If you have a 500 mm lens on an APS-C camera, it's gonna be 800 mm lens. So you are getting more focal length on a crop sensor with the help of this crop factor. So APS-C sensor is gonna really work good for you wildlife or bird photographers because this focal length difference. So crop factor can be made as an advantage as well. So yes guys, I hope I made it clear between full frame and APS-C or crop sensors. So that's it for today's video guys. You have a lot of videos in this playlist that I have already said. The playlist where you have all the basics to learn photography. So this video is one among them. So watch the other videos where I have made videos on ISO, shutter speed, aperture, dynamic range, lot of basics that would be helpful to anyone who is wishing to learn photography. So yes guys, do check out the playlist. I will also put the link in the description. So yes guys, that's it for today's video. I hope this video was really informative. If yes, do hit that like button. Nobody does that, so don't forget to hit that like button just down below. So yes guys, that's it for today's video. We'll meet you in another video. Until then, it's your Carry signing off.